Hey, what's up, fantasy football fans? This is Mitchell with FF Real Talk. And yeah, I'm here to do the quarterback rankings for this season. I already did the running backs and receivers, and my plan was to do the quarterbacks today as well as the tight ends. Not sure if I'm going to get to the tight ends before tomorrow at best. And the drafts, pretty much the final draft weekend is tomorrow and Sunday. Some drafts will be going on, for the rest of the week before Thursday night game kicks off to kick off the season, as well as some people draft even after the beginning of the season starts and either gets retro stats or just start from where they start. But either way, this is pretty much the big weekend that a lot of people do it, or early in the week, and may not get to tight ends at all. If not, sorry. Tight end position is pretty much generally Jimmy Graham, Julius Thomas, whatever Gronk can do this year, and if he's going to be good, he's got the potential to be anywhere as good as Julius Thomas and Jimmy Graham. And then after that, there's pretty much everyone else. It's a few tiers within that, but if you don't get one of those three, just wait on them and get whoever you can, because tight end isn't that the biggest. The depth, the differential between talent is so minuscule between the rest that it's really not that big a deal. In case I don't get to it, just remember that it's Jimmy Graham, Julius Thomas, Gronk, and then after that, everyone else. So. But moving along, we're going to get to the quarterbacks. And it's going to be the top 20 ranked quarterbacks in this video. And number one is obvious. Well, not obvious to some, but to me, it's Peyton Manning at a landslide. Last year was the most historic year in any quarterback has ever put up, led in everything, 450 completions, over 5,400 yards, 55 touchdowns, set every record there could be. And there's not going to be that much tail off between his completions and the yardage, because he's got all his targets. He lost Decker, but he has Emmanuel Sanders, and that's pretty much going to be a push in terms of quality talent. Wes Welker's questionable to start the season with his concussion, but I think he'll be back and fine. And Monty Ball is going to pick up where Noshawn was, so his attack is going to be fine. Problem is, to warrant him being the number one overall pick in a standard league, because his point outings is going to probably outdo everyone else's, he's got to do pretty much the same as he did last year with that record-breaking season. He won't get 55 touchdowns. If he got 45, that's more than you would ask for. That's more than you can ask for. But I think he would get around 40, 41, something just over what Drew Brees or whatever got last year. 55 touchdowns is not going to be happening this year. But he's still a solid first-round overall selection. If you're in a two-quarterback league, he's the number one pick without a doubt. But you temper your expectations if you're expecting what he did last year. It's just not going to happen. It's not logical. But he's going to have a great season if he stays healthy. And the only problem that's been in the the general knowledge with knowing Peyton Manning is his arm strength is leaving. But when his accuracy and his decision making in his head and intelligence is the way it's been for his career, that's just Michael Jordan resorting to fadeaway jumpers instead of dunks later in his career. Nothing changes. So he's a consensus number one for most, and definitely mine. The number two is not necessarily consensus, but it's it's a wash between the two and the three. But with me, it's Drew Brees. He had nearly Manning's completions and yards last year, but he only had 39 touchdowns, which is still fantastic. If not for whatever Peyton Manning did last year, he would have been breaking every record yardage and completion wise. He's an excellent quarterback to have. He's in an offense that is pass first, and he's got 100% one of those situations where you understand that a person leads his team and they depend on him. Sean Payton has a great setup and plan that makes Drew Brees not only a good real life quarterback, top notch real life quarterback, he inadvertently has created a fantasy friendly offense, and that fantasy friendly for the quarterback, and that bodes well for him. He passes a lot, and you can expect more of the same this year. I don't expect him to do anything less than what he did, and that's one thing about Peyton Manning. I said I expect the touchdowns to go down. I don't with Drew Brees. You might get a plus side of his. So anyone who even decides to take him first because they don't feel like Peyton Manning can duplicate that, I have no problem with it. So Drew Brees is a very solid middle of the second round pick in standard drafts. Again, and if it's a two quarterback league, to me, easy second pick. So you can't go wrong with Drew Brees. Aaron Rodgers is the number 3 pick. He only played 9 games last year. But in his 9 games, statistically, he was on pace to match Brees' stats. And the thing about Aaron Rodgers is, many would argue he's the most sound and talent-laden quarterback in the NFL. He's incredibly gifted passer, and overall, if you were to ask me today which quarterback, if I was to create a team from scratch and I got my pick of the litter from a quarterback, it would be Aaron Rodgers to have as a real life quarterback because his mechanics are just so sound. And he's got every reason to blossom this year and knock on the door of the 2 ahead of him because of the injury. He's going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder, but the only downside is within 1 year, the emergence of Eddie Lacy has made them a much more balanced offense as opposed to the paltry running game that they've had. Plus, Greg Jennings is now two years removed. James Jones is gone. But you still have a great passing attack with Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and Jared Boykin. It's gonna be an interesting year, and Eddie Lacy's a good pass catcher as well. So it's gonna be an interesting year. Watch him play with that chip on his shoulder, and I believe he'll be knocking on the door of either of the 2 ahead of you, because they've got some things to prove. It's been a while since they've been a solid contender in the playoffs with a good run. So they're playing with that, and if he's playing with that, that's gonna bode well for us fantasy wise. Number 4 is it's not always clear cut with me is who I pick for number 4, but the offense has pretty much dictated it, and that my number 4 is Matthew Stafford. The Detroit Lions have the best receiver in football with Calvin Johnson. Matt Stafford leads a great aerial attack, and with several years in now, he's starting to develop everything the way it should. And with the new head coach Caldwell and everything, it's going to be even more sound and more disciplined as opposed to the way it's been the last few years. He's always in the league leaders in pass attempts, and but the thing is, he is a problem interception-wise. 19 of them last year. But some of that, like I said, should be curbed with the new offensive scheme. And with Golden Tate as the second option, we're going to find out. I think I said it in my wrong receiver rankings. We're going to find out who Golden Tate is. But that gives him a nice secondary option in passing. And he's got a 2-way tandem of running back pass catchers with Joique Bell and Reggie Bush. He's got all the weapons he needs. Eric Ebron is going to be there to reemerge, so it's all for the taking in terms of his growth. But he's going to have to cut down some of the interceptions. He's a lot like Carson Palmer in that way, but I think this is the year where some of it gets curbed. Expect his touchdowns to go up and some of his interceptions to go down, hopefully. Number 5 is Andrew Luck. He could easily be some people's number 4, and it's because of how mechanically sound and talented he is. He Last year, believe it or not, though, he was very conservative with just 23 touchdowns, which was the exact same as his rookie year. But he really got better in the interception department, where he only had 9 of them, which was half of what he had his rookie year. He's classically talented, and he's much more classically talented than the other young quarterbacks like the RG3s, Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, and that class, Colin Kaepernik, that class of quarterback. Classically meaning arm first, mechanically quarterback style. That's what he is, and we're only just going to see him get better. The offensive line has got to improve to give him more time, and because of that, it presents a huge injury risk for him, though he hasn't got hurt. And speaking of injury, Reggie Wayne comes back, so that gives that weapon back. T.Y. Hilton is back in the fold to have another good year. And we got who I want no part of in terms of fantasy, but in real life, it could very well be a positive surprise with Hakeem Nicks. We'll see how it goes. And if Trent Richardson can get on board, it really frees him up to operate better. When Trent Richardson wasn't doing anything and the running game wasn't doing anything last year, he's forced to do so much more. So hopefully those things get realigned, and he'll be able to do. He'll be able to be a little more in control because of the offense being more balanced. But I expect big numbers from a fantasy standpoint. You could do a lot worse. So Andrew Luck is number 5. Number 6, and he's much higher in the ranks for me than most people, is Matt Ryan. A lot of people have Matt Ryan around 9 and 10. I don't know what everybody's thinking. I don't know what they're thinking about. I think they're thinking about last year's numbers. But Julio Jones, who many would argue is the most talented receiver in the league, is back. He's got Roddy White fully healthy. Matt Ryan's been consistent since he took over the Vic era. But we're going to see who Matt Ryan really is this year because of the loss of his greatest safety valve with Tony Gonzalez. Tony Gonzalez provided everything besides just being a top-notch catcher. He was a great protection guy. He blocked with the best of them. And they're going to lose that. And the offensive line is suspect at times. But again, Matt Ryan is so mechanically sound, and with Julio Jones, all you got to do is it's a jump ball situation. He's got it, and Roddy White is one of the most dependable go-to guys. So their 1-2 punch is great. And with the emergence of Devontae Freeman, I think it's going to be a good year. So I expect his numbers to heavily increase over last year and to be more on par with what he did the year before that. The last few years before last year. Number 7, and this is a complete gamble in my opinion, Nick Foles. All the potential in the world, and he showed it in the games that he spelled Vic last year. Once he took over the starting job, it was clear that it was his, and more importantly, it was clear that he was built to run Chip Kelly's offense. With the loss of Deshaun Jackson, it's gonna be interesting to see where he goes in terms of weapons. And the one thing about him is this is pretty much a educated guess and potential leading to productivity, hopefully, because we don't know anything about Nick Foles for real. We really don't. His preseason was okay, but we're going to see what he's really about. But one of the plus sides of Nick Foles is his mobility. He's sneaky. He was tied for third with 3 rushing touchdowns. He's a strong dude, very athletic and deceptive with it. So his legs give him a little more boosted edge in terms of rushing touchdowns for a QB. And just about every quarterback I've named up until now, Nick Foles has it on all of them in terms of legs. The legs guys are going to come up very immediately after this, actually. But his rushing plus his hopeful productivity with what the flashes we've seen of him gives him the chance to be great. I just hope it's not a Kevin Kolb situation, because that's who I compare it to. Everyone had Kevin Kolb as this big deal when he was the first few games he was in Philly before Michael Vick came in and had that resurgence season. Kevin Kolb was a big, high draft pick among QBs. What was it, 3 years ago? 3 years ago, something like that. And we saw that wasn't nothing. He went to the Cardinals and he wasn't anything. Hopefully he proves to be not that type of flash in the pan guy. With number 8, we got Cam Newton. Everything you know about Cam, he's done since he's been in the league. His rookie year, he had the numbers that a starting quarterback would have and the numbers that some starting running backs would have all in one. I still can't get over his rookie season. It was crazy. His mobility is outstanding. He's the most dangerous rushing threat there is among QBs, and he has one of the strongest arms in the league. But his Achilles heel since he's been in is he's always had one of the worst sets of receivers that he's throwing to. And his number one since he's been in the league is now gone with Steve Smith. So we're going to learn about who he is as a passer and his development. We've got Kelvin Benjamin on deck, and we're expecting some big things from him. And it shouldn't be much different because his receivers haven't been great then, so we'll see it'll be about the same now. Problem with Cam Newton is I don't know if he's healthy. His injured foot, leg, whatever, is really problematic, and it's been problematic. The preseason he hasn't been able to get good work in. It's been a problem all off season, and that surgically repaired ankle is really, really, really a worrisome thing for fantasy owners. So if you take him, you better back him up with somebody solid towards the tail end of your draft, because I don't see him playing 16 games. I would like to believe he will, and if he's there, he's always a plus side quarterback because he's going to get you 6 and better rushing touchdowns. But he's a huge risk this year, so you better back him up if you take him. But because of his potential on the ground with his running and in the red zone, you can't count him out. He's always going to be in the top 10 because of that. Which leads to the number 9 guy, which is similar in terms of a number of things. RG3. Excellent mobility, strong arm, better receiving core than he's had since he's been in the league, because he's kind of been like Cam in terms of a receiving thing. And, when Santana Moss and Pierre Garçon are pretty much your guys, things can be a little shaky. Pierre is good, but, Santana Moss is hard to believe he's still playing. But they got Deshaun Jackson. Great downfield threat. That's a new toy for him. But just like Cam, we're going to really see, well, not like Cam. Cam's injury is fresh. RG3 is a year removed from the beginning of his comeback from ACL. So that should be in check. But his injury risk is just as much as Cam, because this fool will not slide. You saw in the preseason, he took 3 hits on one play heading to the outside. How, if you're going to go out of bounds, that's the point, to avoid getting hit. He got hit 3 times going out of bounds. Makes no sense to me. So this dude is kind of arrogant. He's kind of got he's got his head in some cloud or up something that makes him absolutely, his decision making kills me. But you can't discount his talent and his ability. So I think if he can get on the ground, he'll be all right. And if he plays 16 games, he'll be even better. Plus, again, he gives you a running option. But they're going to cut some of that down this year. You know, with the new offense, you're going to see a lot more throwing because they want to preserve this guy if he's going to be the guy. So we'll see what happens. But at least he's injury free. That's one thing. Number 10. And this isn't among many people don't feel this way, sort of like where I had Matt Ryan. Tom Brady has been really getting the short end of the stick in fantasy circles this year. He's ranked some people's number 15, 12. He's going in auctions for very cheap. Do y'all know who this guy is? This is Tom Brady. Yes, since Moss left, since Gronk has had his problems the last few years, he has weapon issues, but this is Tom Brady. Last year, he was nearly 2-1 in TDs to interceptions with 25-11. He had a solid statistical season. I don't know what people's problem is with him, and his weapons this year are pretty much the same. He still has Julian Edelman. He still has Kimbrell Tompkins, which is nothing, but it's still the same. You have Danny Amendola, and hopefully he's going to be injury-free, at least at the start of the season. Shane Vereen. It's the same people. Same people. So I don't see where the difference is. If he duplicates last year but more consistently and even, he'll be just fine. He was hard to own last year. And I had him on a couple of teams. And he was a struggle at times. But this year, I see somewhat of him knowing that this is what I have. And if Gronk can give you 12 games, it's a plus side thing. So Tom Brady is Tom Brady is Tom Brady. You don't count him out. You don't forget who he is. And that's why he's my number 10. Colin Kaepernik. He's hard to own in fantasy because he doesn't pass a lot. He was tied for second with rushing touchdowns with 4 last year. But again, his stats are limited in terms of attempts, completions, yards, throwing touchdowns, and everything. This year, we're going to find out who he is. He's got Michael Crabtree as the clear-cut number 1. Still has Vernon Davis. Still has Anquan Bolden. We're really going to find out who Cap is. This preseason, he's looked bad. He hasn't really looked good. It's looked to me more than anything than it being a Kaepernick thing. It looks more like that San Francisco's locker room isn't together. And when the locker room isn't together, the leadership isn't together. And when the leadership is suffering, fantasy points become affected. I have Colin Kaepernick maybe on one team, and he's my bench QB. I really wouldn't want to depend on him this year, but again, his upside is through the roof, and I think in this year, third year as having a bulk of the starts, we're going to see who he is. Second year as start from the beginning of the season, so we're going to see who Kaepernick is this year. Number 12, Phillip Rivers. Last year was his renaissance year. After 2 terrible years with 2011, 2012, I thought it was done. I really, really did. But last year, he was 4th in the league in TDs with 32, and he had 32 touchdowns, which was 7 less than Drew Brees' 39, but he attempted 100 less passes than Manning or Brees. Think about that. You could throw the ball 100 less times and get still over 30 touchdowns than those guys. That's saying something. And he was nearly 3-1 TDs to interception ratio. He has Keenan Allen, still has Danny Woodhead, still has Ryan Matthews, and he has the tight end duo of Gates and Darius Green. He's got his weapons. He's got his experience, and more than anything, in terms of even in real life and fantasy, he's got his confidence back. we were seeing Rivers making some bonehead plays a few years ago. It seems like he's back to the normal, arrogant, Phillip Rivers that we know. And arrogant Rivers is good Rivers. So, and you can get him at a good discount in terms of fantasy. You don't have to take him. It's sort of like, and I'll say that for the last few people I was saying, well, not Colin Kaepernick. Some people reach for him. You can take Tom Brady and Phillip Rivers late in drafts and still get them. So you got time. If you want to wait on quarterback, if you don't get one of those top three, wait, flesh your team out all the way and get somebody like Rivers. Because again, fourth and TDs with 32, you can, and I don't expect him to do any less than that. Keenan Allen's going to have just as good a year, if not better, this year. I have him as my starting QB on a couple of teams. And those teams are loaded at the top in terms of running backs and receivers. So that's a really good option to do. Him, and a few others below are just like that. And like Tom Brady was an example of that as well as the next guy, number 13, unlucky number 13. Ironically and fittingly, we'll go to the most unlucky quarterback there is in the NFL, Tony Romo. Funny. People make fun of Tony Romo all the time. Everything from his only one playoff game situation to the Cowboys never get it done, Jerry World this, huge contract that, never is healthy this, good Romo, bad Romo, all the things you want to say. Fantasy-wise, generally, he's okay to own. He'll give you some lean weeks and give you some questionable times where you're like, should I start him or should I start whoever my backup is because he had such a bad week the week before. But his stats were nearly identical to Rivers, except he had 600 less passing yards, but played in one game less. So he was very similar to an outstanding season last year. And he's got Dez. And he's got Jason Witten, and he's got Terrence Williams, and he's also got a troubling back surgery for the second year in the offseason. I don't know how that's going to affect this game. Apparently, it's not supposed to, but we're going to see. But the bigger monkey on his back than any surgery is that huge contract he has, and another big monkey on the back, Jerry Jones and his impatience. They put some extreme trust in him by giving him that contract, so they're going to have to bite the bullet. But we all know this is Garrett's last year if they don't at least win a playoff game. This is Garrett's last year. And with that, Tony Romo is still looking down the barrel of a gun every day, every game. Most criticized quarterback, most hailed when he wins. So, but in fantasy, he's very solid to own. And again, you don't have to pay heavy for him. He's going late in drafts, and you can do worse than Tony Romo as your starting quarterback. So, if you wait till late, he's not a bad option to have as your first quarterback. Russell Wilson. I generally don't like owning Russell Wilson. He doesn't pass enough. He's in an offense that's run first, notably. They don't even pretend to think they're going to throw much. And they got rid of Golden Tate. Their receiving core is quite questionable. They no longer have Sidney Rice either. But he's had a crazy preseason, a very accurate preseason. And it's looking like he's passing better than he ever has. And among everyone I've mentioned, especially the new breed guys, no one has shown more development by step, and continuous growth than Russell Wilson. And nothing showed that more than not only getting to, but winning the Super Bowl. Maybe it was a lot on the defense, but still, I think he's got a lot of growth as a passer. And his stats were nearly similar to like that of a Colin Kaepernik, someone who doesn't pass much. But I think he's going to do much better than Cap this year, and he's going to pass more like it. He's a much better real-life quarterback than fantasy. But if the preseason indicates anything of what he's going to do with what he has, he'll be just fine. And I think you're going to see a uprising in terms of the Seattle offense and it being more of a pass thing, more so than last year. And with that, Russell Wilson's stats will go up. So having him at 14. If you have him as your starting QB, it's going to be somewhat of a risk. So you want to back him up with at least somebody, but he's okay. Solid guy to have. Number 15, Jay Cutler. I would rather have Jay Cutler as my starter than even the guy ahead with Russell Wilson because he's in a pass-first offense and his weapons are outstanding with Brandon Marshall, Alshon, Martellus Bennett, and Matt Forte. You got one of the best arsenals in the league. But he's a headache to own because he throws so many interceptions. In 11 games last year, because McCown played a lot of games last year as well, and he excelled last year, he was 19-12. 19 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. That's not going to cut it on nobody's team. That dude is just going to throw where he feels like it. That's what Jay Cutler's, I can't even explain. His sensibility is kind of strange to me. When you look at him, he's just kind of strange. He's that weird kind of dude. But he's a very, very solid and specific passer. I mean, he's got some great arm strength and some pretty good accuracy. But his decision making is just so questionable. He's just a little too arrogant. But he makes for great fantasy stats when he's good Cutler. And you got to expect it to be a good Cutler again with Mark Trestman's second year. And if he stays healthy, he'll have a full year of Trestman to kind of reel him in. But you have to know what you get when you take Jay Cutler. You're going to have a great positive outlook in terms of touchdowns this year. And I think it's going to be even higher with Marshall and Jeffrey. He's going to get you some great positive stats, but you're going to have to eat some interceptions. You're going to have to eat some minus points owning Jay Cutler. Just like Romo, just like Rivers, you don't have to pay much to get a Cutler. You can get him late in drafts. And having Cutler as your starting quarterback, that's just fine. When you've got weapons like you have in Chicago, you'll be just fine. If you don't get one of the better quarterbacks from, number one to like Stafford or Luck, it's okay to completely bail yourself out and just wait and pick up somebody like Cutler. And that includes the number 16 guy as well, Carson Palmer. Just like Jay Cutler, in many, many, many ways, can throw the ball fantastic. Strong arm. Doesn't have the arm strength he had back when he was in the Bengals, but very strong arm. Just like Cutler, prone to interceptions. But just like Cutler, has a nasty arsenal around him. Larry Fitzgerald, Michael Floyd, Andre Ellington, and John Brown, who is a rookie sleeper. Everybody's wondering a few sleepers. We're asking about a few sleepers in terms of receivers, and I told you about Brandon Cooks, John Brown. If you don't know it now, get familiar. Start trying to claim them off waivers. Start trying to think about getting them late flyers in drafts. John Brown is a sleeper receiver. You heard that here. He's got in the top 5 arsenal with all those guys. And with Bruce Arians' offense, they're going to throw more than anyone else. So it's a really plus side thing to have Palmer. People thought it was done, and for many reasons. But last year, from the second half of the season, he proved that he was solid. And I think this year will be more of that. Again, if you wait late in drafts and Carson Palmer is your number 1, I'd much rather have Carson Palmer as number 2 to spell a situation where one of the top guys either got hurt or was underperforming, and I got a quality number 2. But Carson Palmer, you don't have to pay anything for it. In several leagues I'm in, he's still out there on the waiver or going in the last rounds of drafts. So you can get him next to nothing dollar-wise and expect an outcome that's really, really solid in terms of fantasy points. Number 17, Andy Dalton. This is a quarterback I don't really care for too much, but last year he was third in yards and second in touchdowns over the last 5 weeks of the season. He makes bonehead plays just like Palmer, just like Cutler, and throws into coverage a whole lot. But he's also got a solid arsenal with one of the best receivers in the league, A.J. Green, and you've got Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard, who's going to emerge to give them room to throw and do some catching of their own. Another guy of that young breed that's in that hole, we're going to see who Andy Dalton is this year. I'm still not convinced he's a franchise player, but he's okay. But that's why he's number 17 on my list out of 20. Because when it comes to fantasy, up to top 12, which stopped at Rivers, is people that you would take anywhere before the 13th round. Everybody from 13 on afterwards, from Tony Romo, Russell Wilson, all the way down to where I'm at now. This is where we're talking about flyers late in drafts and getting next to nothing. So there's no need. He's another guy you don't have to spend anything on, but he's also another guy you don't want. I don't think you want him as your starting quarterback of number one. I'd much rather have Palmer. I'd much rather have Cutler. Much rather have Wilson, Romo, and Rivers. I don't want Andy Dalton as anything but a backup. I don't like him so much that he's a backup in one league I'm in, and I don't really love it. So, but, he's a solid guy. He's a starting quarterback in the league. So, is what it is. Number 18, Ben Roethlisberger. The reason he's this low is because of age. He takes a beating every year. He's generally top 10 in the league, and last year he proved it, top 10 in yards, attempts, completions, and touchdowns. But he's also top 10 in interceptions, with 14 last year. He's a proven winner, Super Bowl titles, et cetera, but he's old now. He's injury prone, and he's dangerous with the way he plays, and he's lost weapon after weapon year after year. Wallace is gone. Emmanuel Sanders is gone. Jericho Cotchery is gone. So what you now have is Antonio Brown, and you have Marcus Wheaton. It's Antonio Holmes is gone. He loses weapon after weapon after weapon. But he makes things happen with what he has, and he's a solid guy. In bye week fill-ins, but like I say, at this point, anywhere from like Russell Wilson, number 14 down, these are the second quarterback I want to have on my team. Ben Roethlisberger will be just fine to spell you on a bye week. That's pretty much what everyone on this list is at this point. Have him as a solid guy to back you up on waivers, So that's about it. That's about it to say about Roethlisberger. Number 19, Jake Locker. Personally, I like Jake Locker. Every time I watch him play, I see things that's a mechanically sound quarterback, and I've seen it ever since college when he was at Washington. I think every time I watch him, this guy's just solid, man. Look at what some of the amazing things he does. He can't stay healthy, man. Liz Frank injury last year. That's when your foot is really, really messed up, and he's coming back from that this year. So we're going to see what he's all about, if he can really be a starting quarterback in this league. In the last 2 years, he's only played 18 games combined. So we don't know who he is. Sort of like with Nick, he's about like Nick Foles, but we know him a little better than Nick Foles, I think. We don't know anything about Jay Locker. But in limited time, he's shown some excellence, and I like his mechanics. Plus, he has Justin Hunter. And since the running game is so questionable in terms of if it's going to be Sankey, is it going to be Sean Green, whoever, we're going to find out what he's about in the passing game. So, again, a great flyer to have late as a second quarterback. I'd rather have a better second quarterback, but he's a perfect third quarterback in a two quarterback league. It's very solid there. So, and then which leads to number 20, which is Josh McCown. Statistically, he had one of the more eye-opening seasons, the 8 starts he had, than you would have ever imagined for Josh McCown. He's never been able to hold down a starting job his years in the league, but last year in his 8 starts, 8 TDs with only 1 interception. I mean, this dude spelled Jay Cutler in a major way and did a complete 180 of what Cutler does. Nearly interceptionless, while Cutler is throwing them all the time, which isn't bad. I mean, this is really good for a guy like that. And his statistics mirrored Cam Newton's in terms of attempts, completions, yards, but in terms of pace of Cam Newton last year, but much fewer interceptions. He's going to be in a new offense with Tampa Bay, with a new coach in Tampa Bay with Lovey. We're gonna find out quickly how he is as a quarterback, because he's got 2 giants that's gonna be out on those edges. Vincent Jackson, Mike Evans, 6'5" apiece, 2 towers running down the field to throw to. With those guys, you should be able to make something happen. So we're going to find out if he's starting quarterback material. He hasn't been his time in the league. He showed some flashes last year. We're going to see what he's about. Again, a great third quarterback to own in a 2 quarterback league. You can get away with leaving him on waivers in standard leagues or whatever, and you got to pay virtually nothing in auctions for him. So, so that wraps up, the 20 guys. So basically, just as I'm going to go over what I think in terms of I'm going to post a list of the guys in the description on here, but anywhere from 1 to 13 in terms of Tony Romo, any of those 13 guys are the guys I would trust being a number 1 quarterback on my team. And some of them I trust more than others. Anywhere from 14 to 20 are guys that I would want to be either my second quarterback in standard leagues or third quarterback in 2 quarterback leagues. So that's how it is. I'm not really going to break this down in tiers too much when I post it, because, it pretty much speaks for itself. But that's my rankings, and I hope it helps everybody. But in this last weekend before the leagues, for the season rather, get started. I want to thank everybody who's subscribing, everyone who's getting involved, who's asking questions, who's finding this to be of benefit. Please spread the word. I know a lot of people, especially when it comes to fantasy football, you want to kind of keep things to yourself, because this is, at the end of the day, if you're anything like me, you're competitive and you want to win. So if you found an edge that gives you a resource rather that gives you what you deem an edge, you keep it secret. But I'm doing this, and I play fantasy football as well. So I'm giving out things that I believe, my own rankings, and I'm playing. So this is about making the fantasy community better. Please, if you like what I'm saying out here, spread the word to your people. Let them know. I want the subscriptions to grow to be as much as possible, so that more people hear it and more people become more serious and hopefully somewhat better at playing, And like I say, throughout as the season gets started next week, follow me on Twitter at FFRealTalk. Again, that's Twitter at FFRealTalk and at FFRealtalk to ask me any start-sit questions, any waiver additions. Who would you rather pick, this guy or that guy? I get questions, already, so feel free to do that. And this is going to be a season-long thing. I'm not stopping here. I'm going to be posting, throughout. So, but the best way to reach me is on Twitter. So again, follow me on Twitter. hit that like button, ask questions, leave comments, let me know what you think. And again, if I do a tight end thing, it'll be early tomorrow. If not, again, you heard my tight end discussion at the beginning of the video. So I hope this helps you, and we'll see you next time. All right, have a good one.